Happy birthday to me. Well, good morning. It's February 5th, and we're getting a real and proper storm. Started last night. Not the accumulation like our friends on the East Coast got, but a lot of wind and cold. So I apologize, you're going to hear a lot of background noises. Old drafty farmhouse, the wind is really buffering or hitting us, and then also the furnace is running quite a bit because it's so cold. So I thought I would start out here. Some of what you're going to see in today's episode was filmed in January. And so I'm going to include that, and then I'll come back and talk about some other things that are going on. But I just thought I'd start out with the introduction to say that that's how it's going to be, to ask how you've been, to run down a few things before we get started in the true heart of the podcast. My name is Carrie. I'm coming to you from the middle of the Mitten, Michigan's Lower Peninsula, where I live on a small farm with a small sheep flock, our horse Cowl, and a retired barn cat, a small flock of chickens. And some of you, I've been asked a couple of different times to talk more about Cowl, and I intended to do that in this episode. But even without the snow, we have been hit with some very, very cold temperatures. And so to stand outside and to, because I thought I'd stand out there with him, maybe give him a good brushing or combing out his mane and that. But so that's going to come later on, and we'll talk about Cowl some more. Let's see, what else? So that's about Cowl. We're about 2.5 months from lambing for whoever might be bred. A few of the ewes are bellying down, and so I think that at least a few of them are bred. There should be 8 ewes bred altogether, 2 different rams, 4 and 4. So we'll see how that goes. And probably ahead of that will be shearing time. So about 2 months before shearing, when the weather starts to break just a little bit. And oh, before I forget, I wanted to mention real quickly, speaking of shearing, last year with everything that was going on, I didn't put the fleeces out for sale. I had some beautiful fleeces. I just didn't have the brain space and the time to photograph them and list them and go back and forth with prices and weighing them and shipping them. I did sell most of the fleeces just from regular customers who reached out and said, hey, have you got something? And those I did. But I still have, now these would be last year's fleeces, 2020, 2 beautiful gray fleeces, one more silvery gray, one a little bit darker, not a charcoal, more a steely gray. And both were coated fleeces. One is a lamb fleece, and I'm not exactly sure on the pounds. I should have checked that before I came on. But those are available. So if you're interested, reach out to me either here or on Instagram. I'm at MyWoolMitten on Instagram. And I don't know if these will show. Maybe I'll have to take a picture and insert them. Let's see. Probably not going to show the crimp very well. But this is from Petoskey, who was a ram that we had. You can see that's a good long staple length. More silvery. He does have, there are a few darker spots. Not real dark. Not going to focus, is it? Well, I'll take some pictures and insert them. So that's Petoskey. The other one is from, this was his lamb fleece, but this was from a ram bear, who I don't think I ever showed you or talked about. He was like the backup ram that we had. And so he is a little bit shorter, staple length, a little less descript crimp, and a little darker color. You can see that's kind of that blue steely gray, but a very nice fleece. So those are both available if anyone's interested. And it's not a full fleece. I've kept some and used it. A couple of pounds of each. I think maybe 4 pounds of Petoskey's and 2 or 3 pounds of bears. So I'll take some pictures and slip those in. I might mention it on Instagram too if anyone's interested. So let's go on to talk about make-alongs, inspirations, knitting, and there'll be a little bit of sheep footage at the end at the start of the snowstorm because you always want to see the sheep. This China hutch, you saw if you follow me on Instagram, this is part of my organization and my storage that goes along with some of the knit-alongs. I might tell you real quickly, I have kind of an addiction to old china cabinets and old buffets nearly as much as yarn. I think this was my 5th one. One of them being my grandma's. One that belonged to a dear friend she gave to me. And this is the most expensive one at $45. Now they're getting hard to find. And in the same store, the same thrift store that I was at the day that I got this one, there were several that were $250, $500. Somebody didn't realize what this vintage china cabinet was really worth. It's in excellent shape. So I'll talk about those a little bit more. Maybe show my other one. This has more worsted weight yarns in it, and then the center shelf is my Nutiden. The other china hutch that's in the living room with the glass front, that has more the fingering weight yarns in it. So, okay, let's go on. I think I'm going to have to move locations. This looks like it's really blowing out. So let's see how it looks. I'll take a look at it, see how it looks. We might have to move location, but I'll be right back. I thought I would maybe mention real quickly before I did leave this location. I got quite a few comments after I showed the picture of this room on Instagram about what a cozy room it looked like. I'm actually looking across the room at a small electric fireplace, but a little fireplace nonetheless. And this room was our bedroom, and it's where my husband spent his last days. And after he passed, and a lot of you will understand this, it was just awfully hard to walk into this room and have it be empty. That just was hard. And yet, at the same time, I found myself wanting to spend my time here, if that makes sense, and it will to a lot of you. So I got an idea to do some rearranging, and I did. And so I won't show you the whole room, but I've made like a day bed across the way here, so I have a place to sit. The girls, my stepdaughters, Bill's 2 girls, got the fireplace for me, the little fireplace. I've got some other treasures here. And when I brought the china hutch in for the yarn, I wasn't sure this was where it was going to go, but this was closest to the back door, and it's very heavy. So I thought, well, I'll try it here first. If I don't like it, then I can move it on. But this was the closest, and I really liked it here. But then I had to do some rearranging. And one of the things was that these are Bill's hats, his most worn hats, my husband. And they used to hang along the wall over there, along with some other things. And so I thought, now, I tried them on top of the china hutch, but they didn't show up and it didn't look right. And so I hung them here. And so then I still see them, and that's something that I really like. And you can't see, I'll get a picture maybe later on. There's a picture that my son-in-law did a pen and pencil drawing of the barn, what it looked like to look out this window and see the barn. He had done that for Bill, and that's up top there. And so I just thought I'd mention that because I got a few comments after I'd showed the little video clip that I did on Instagram about how cozy this room looked. The roses, the yellow roses and the yellow carnations, that yellow bouquet there was from my youngest stepdaughter, Bill's youngest daughter. She's the florist, and she got those for me. I don't know that they were actually for my birthday, but she brought them just shortly after my birthday, and they're holding up so beautifully, and so they sit here where I can see them. So I just thought I would mention that before I left this room. And the quilt behind me, which is actually over, I don't have a curtain up, this is what's on the window. There's a big window here, but that quilt my mother made, and it features sheep, and I could turn this a little, but it's going to really blow out because of the light. But you see a little of it. And you've seen it in pictures, I think. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that real quickly. And then the calendar up here is my Raven's Brew Coffee calendar. Raven is what I'm doing for the Lost Words Make Along. And so for February, it's all Raven artwork. And so that's what's up there. So, all right, I'll talk to you in a minute. So my first finished object of 2021, and this is my birthday advent cowl, made from the pattern from a Kate Davies book, and I'll spell it out for you, Cochal. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And I made this as part of Kate from Hawthorn Cottage Crafts Make Along, which is knitting the books, and the challenge was to knit something from a book that we already have. And I chose this one. The yarns were an advent swap that I did with Tanya of Natural Earth Farm, and they were yarns that I had not used. I asked for worsted weight, and so it was mostly piece fleece, some Harrisville designs or Harrisville tweed, some Quince & Co., and then a few other random ones, but all yarns that I had never used before. So wasn't that exciting to do? And the cowl itself, you were to do, I think, 17 of these cells. And I thought, well, there were 25 colors, one being the main color, which is this gray. And you can see here where I messed up and didn't change my, you were supposed to stagger these. But anyway, I started out doing one color for each cell. Well, that would have been about the size of a small sweater tube. And so I ripped back and started again, and I did 2 colors in each of these up to the 24. And that worked out really well. And I'll take some pictures of it on. It hasn't been washed or blocked yet. I just finished it. I just cast it off this morning for my birthday. Knit on US size 7 over 108 stitches. And I love the retro feel of the colors. Now, I will say, I'm going to see when it's blocked. 2 things. I like the garter stitch edging, but it does want to, like on the bottom it wants to flip up, and on the top it wants to flip down. And I'm thinking that I might cast on the inside with a finer, softer yarn and do a lining for it. And maybe, we'll see, maybe blocking will help that, but just an idea. So I couldn't be more pleased with my birthday advent cowl. And I look forward to showing you what my birthday cast on is going to be later today, and talk about some more make-along inspirations. Let me see if you can see outside the light. The sun has started, or I say the sun started to come up. It's daylight. It's still very dark and blue outside. We're predicted to have some snow today, and I hope that we do. We could use a fresh snow to cover the ground, and that would be a lovely birthday present. So I will talk to you soon. Time for another cup of coffee. Again, birthday advent cowl. A variety of worsted weight, all wool yarns for the make along with Hawthorn Cottage Crafts, knitting the books. Oh, and I forgot to say, the good thing is you can see, excuse my squeaky chair, you can see I've got plenty of most of the colors left, and so I'm planning to cast on for a pair of mittens in a similar kind of honeycomb pattern or staggered color pattern from another Kate Davies book that I have, West Highland Way. So we'll talk more about that in just a bit. And I thought that before we get up and leave this little corner, I would draw and see what fiber I'm going to be spinning next. You remember that I'm spinning down my stash, and once a month I'm going to try to work on something that is about 8 ounces or less that I have. And so I've gone through, weighed them, labeled them, and then I put a little tag in this bag to draw from to do my spinning for the month. I'm a little late getting started this month, but anyway, so I don't know if you can hear them in there. So we'll draw and see. We'll find out together. Ah, look, it's number 24, which is perfect for today because today's the 24th. And then let's see what fiber it is. Oh my goodness. Swedish wool from Caroline and Knut. This makes me very happy. It almost seems like a sign of some kind, doesn't it? Or just a full circle moment. So that's what I'll be spinning on next. I had more than that. I've already spun up about half of it. So yeah, I'm excited. So stash number 24 on the 24th for my birthday from my friend. Wonderful. I apologize if you hear the furnace kick on. It's a very cold night here tonight, and it's running pretty hard. I think it just kicked on. So I'm going to run down through the names of a few make-alongs, knit-alongs, craft-alongs, and see if you've heard of any of them. There is the Lucky Dip Cowl and the Knitting the Book Cowl with Kate at Hawthorn Cottage Craft. There's the Mitten knit-along with Marce and Denise. There's the Lost Words make-along with Sarah from Fiber Trek. Did I mention Danelle from the Gathering Basket and her 21 Skeins make-along? And then one that's kind of won them all together for me is the Plan Knit make-along. Plan Knit Cowl, K-A-L, with Emily from AndersMillKnits, co-hosted by Stephanie. And finally, the Lenten knit-along, which doesn't start for a little while yet, but it is one that's on the radar for me. So the main theme for those, for me, is to gather up and to appreciate and to use up my stash. I'm sitting in a wooden chair, so it's a little squeaky. And I will have shown you, there somewhere on here would have been some beautiful skeins of indie dyed yarn, maybe a few commercial skeins, but sock weight yarn, fingering weight yarn. And those are now hidden away in these little bags. And I have put stitch markers on them because I have a collection of stitch markers that I enjoy. And so I'll have those when I open up the package and discover what yarn I had put in there. They're not marked in any way for me to know what will be in the bags. There are 10 bags here. Let me see if I can get this chair moved a little bit so you don't listen to it squeak obnoxiously. And then, so 10 here, and then 11 and 12. Because you'll remember I mentioned that I knew what project I was going to do in January when I finished my Advent cowl, and that was to start a pair of mittens on my birthday, and that's what is here. And then this is my Bed of Roses project, the Paris Quadrifolia sock that I did decide I want to rework. And so, but it's so beautiful in the bag from Katrine that I thought I'll just leave it there. It's not a surprise, but it's housed safely away in that bag. And then moving slowly so as not to make you seasick. In this basket are the leftovers from my Advent knitting. And you can see that some of these have quite a bit of yarn left in them. And so I'm going to start another project with that. I was thinking I might start it and have that be another entry in the Knitting the Books knit along. I have a project in mind for that. So we'll see. Or that may wait to go along with my Lent knitting. That's with Contemplative Knitter, and it's going to be a little bit of a spiritual retreat, I think, of knitting for me. But the others focus around planning for using up the beautiful stash that I have. And I can't remember if I talked to you about the fact that I do want to use, I want to consolidate my yarns and make plans for using up stuff that I have. Not so much to make room, but just to appreciate the beautiful yarns that I already have. And most of those will be farm yarns, but as I was gathering and organizing and documenting my stash, and that's part of the plan with the Plan Knit cowl that Emily is hosting, is documenting and planning for your stash. There were some special skeins of fingering weight yarn or sock yarn that I knew I did want to keep. Maybe they were a gift from someone, or maybe they were dyed by someone who's special to me with their special meaning. And so those I kept. Now some I have given away. There's more that I'm going to give away, but I did keep 12. 12 plus 2 more very special Bumblebee Acre Farms yarns that are not going anywhere. There are plans for those. So, but they're not in one of these bags. So anyway, back to that. Knit-alongs and me, you know, like a lot of you, we get carried away and we get started with them and then we don't finish. But I use them more as an inspiration. And starting with a bunch of other knitters, that's a fun thing to do. But I'm hoping that because of the theme of these, using some of these up, and I'm not in it for prizes, I don't need more yarn, really don't need more patterns. Now, if a project bag was a prize, I might contemplate that. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So I'm hoping that that'll kind of help keep me on track this year. The Lost Words Make-Along, the 21 Skeins Make-Along, and the Plan Knit Knit-Along are all year-long knit-alongs. And I think Kate's Lucky Dip is as well. So those are ones that, you know, we'll keep going with. One thing that I wanted to say too, today is January 31st, and I would have been opening one of these and seeing what I would have to make for February, but I have learned of someone who is grieving a loss that I want to make a project for, and so that's also going to be from yarn that I have, but it's not going to be one of these sock yarns. I know what yarn I'm going to use for that. So I'll hold off on these until I get that other project finished. It shouldn't take me too long. It's a pair of mittens, like I said, for someone who has a loss. And then along with that, I'm doing my spinning, which I haven't really shown you. I should do some footage of that. So anyway, I treated myself to a cup of hot chocolate, and I had these things sitting here, and I thought, well, it's evening light, but maybe I think they're showing pretty well. And I'd talk about those make-alongs. So here's my entry, or the beginnings of my entry to the Lost Words Make-Along with Sarah from Fibertrack. I had mentioned on Instagram that I had intended to use words that had meaning for us here on the farm. Words like acorn or oak, fern, dandelion. But Raven kept choosing me, kept coming into my life. Starting with a new favorite coffee that had a special winter solstice roast, and this make-along started on the solstice. I thought that was kind of neat. This black Navajo churro roving from DOT Ranch that is just incredible. I've spun a little bit of it. Oh my. This red is some naturally dyed red. It's not as bright as what it's showing here. And so, and some artwork. And some artwork that came up. So I just really felt like Raven had chosen me. And then I was looking, going through sorting books, magazines, and found this old spin-off. I covered up the text so you can't really read. This is a pair of mittens that was designed by Judith Mackenzie. And there is a raven. And she talks about the red being a color for good luck. And so I'm going to spin and make for those mittens. And I was going to just spin this. But then, like I said, since I had been thinking about oak and acorn and such, this is some of our farm yarn and some hand-spun yarn that I dyed with oaks and acorns and oak leaves. And there's not enough there to do a very big project. But so now I'm thinking I could choose one of those, one of the darker ones, make the body of the mitten, spin the churro for the contrast. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? And this is no paid sponsorship. No, I don't get free coffee for telling you this, but oh my goodness, Raven's Brew Coffee. And this was a really good one. Wicked Wolf is my favorite. That's the one I like. Well, I've really just moved across the room from where I started, and I think this is a little better. Let's hope so. We'll give it a try. I'm sorry to keep fidgeting with the neck of my sweater. It doesn't want to sit just right today. And I might mention, you can't see it a lot, but what I'm wearing is the Ollivander Turtleneck by Fabel Knitwear, and this is made in Nutiden. And you'll have seen me wearing it, and I'll have talked about it a couple of different times. And I did mention it in my last podcast as one of my items to finish. All it needs is sleeves, and I have been wearing it. You've probably seen me wearing it in pictures or in video, all without adding the sleeves to it. It's still on waste yarn. And so that just tells me that I'm perfectly fine with this pattern without adding sleeves to it. So I just need to put a little finish on them. I think one has a few more rows than the other, and then it's done, and I can wear it without strings hanging off the end of it. So Nutiden yarn, of course, one of my favorites, and I really liked this pattern too. It has a little color work on the bottom, and it was very easy to knit. I really enjoyed it. So what else? Now I will have talked about finishing my birthday cowl, my Advent cowl, and that was also for the Knitting the Books Knit Along with Kate at Hawthorn Cottage Crafts. I talked about my new cast on, my birthday cast on, and that was for mittens using All That Cake yarn from Dorothy, who has a podcast called Knitting for Breakfast. But I don't think she's podcasting right now. So because I tried to look to get the name right and I couldn't find it. So Dorothy, if you are and I have it wrong, I apologize. But I will link to the Etsy shop where her yarn was. I'm nearly finished with the mittens. Here's one. I can't tell if that's focusing or not. Is it? I put a little texture on the back side. And this was that fingering weight yarn held double. What else can I tell you about that? Oh, there'll be some news about that pattern here coming up. These were loosely started with the Mitten make along with Marce and Denise. And although I can't remember if I officially tagged it to start them. So I may have to just cast on another pair of mittens to compete in the knit along. Which is no problem. I think I also mentioned that I need to make something for someone who has suffered a loss, and I want to make them a little something, and that's going to be a pair of mittens. So I could tag that in the make along. So how's everybody been doing? I'll try not to fidget with my hair because it's making me crazy. But like so many of us in COVID times, I only get my hair cut twice a year anyway. I get it cut in the spring and I get it cut just before winter. My hair grows really fast. I work outside. I work on the farm. I don't mess with it very much. I like to be able to just pull it back or up off of my neck in the hot summer months. So then I usually get it cut fairly short at the start of winter. And so because things had been shut down and I hadn't gone for a haircut, when they opened up and we could go, I actually took the time. I thought, well, I'll go to an actual salon where I know it's more one-on-one work, and you know they're disinfecting in between. Went to someone who was recommended, and I got the worst haircut I have ever had. But like the girl and I were talking about, it's got to be hard to cut hair when people have a mask on. And I'm all for masks. I'm not knocking that at all. I wish that we would all just wear our masks and wash our hands and keep a little distance and try to get through this. So I'm all for masks. But I was thinking about how hard that must be to cut someone's hair when you have to work around the ear flaps. You know, you've got, maybe the mask is sitting crooked, whatever. But so, yeah, even pulling my hair back, I nearly just put a hat on. Thank goodness that it's winter and we wear hats a lot, right? But so it's just pulled back right now, and I apologize. And I'm also trying not to wiggle the tripod here. And I did put on earrings. I liked them because they kind of match my sweater. What else can we talk about? Well, I guess probably it's time to just wrap this all up. Thank you for being here with me. As I think I forgot to say at the beginning, I appreciate all of you. I appreciate those who come back and those who are new. I thank any of you who mentioned my podcast on yours or throughout social media. So just a quick rundown again of the make-alongs, the knit-alongs that are an inspiration to me, not for following along to do a make-along for the sake of winning a prize or for getting something done by a certain time, but just to encourage me to make a little bit of a plan and have a little bit of thought for what I want to do with my yarn going forward. And the biggest one probably for that, to thank for that, is the Plan Knit Along that Emily from AndersMillKnits is doing, co-hosted by Stephanie. It's a year-long one. I like it because she's kind of broken it up into quarters. Like at the start here, we're going through and we're organizing our stash. We're cataloging our yarn, whether it's on Ravelry or in a notebook. I'm not putting my farm yarns on my either my own farm yarns or others. I'm not putting those on there, not as far as listed in stash. I'm trying to, the indie yarns and the commercial yarns that I did keep that I'm planning to use, I have tried to put on there, and I've got several of those. I think I talked to you about my china cabinets, which are what I use for yarn storage, mostly the glass front ones because I can see what I have. Now it doesn't all fit in there, so I have some in, because I also have some buffets, you know, things that used to go in dining rooms where people kept china and silver and that kind of stuff. So I have some in there that doesn't, you know, if it doesn't fit in my cabinets. So I have those around the house as well. And I still have more to go. I was thinking I was doing so well, Emily, you would have laughed at me. I thought, boy, I really have got a pretty good handle, a good start on this. And I found a whole nother big, tall cardboard box, you know, like refrigerator size box. Not quite that tall, but pretty close, that I have to go through. So I'm owning up, I'm fessing up to that. What else? So there's those. There's a couple coming up a little bit later. One's going to start on Lent, and that is on some soulful knitting for me. I think I mentioned it a little earlier. Bring a little focus in, and I'm looking forward to that. I'll put the link to that down below. And the other one that I'm doing that's not knitting related, but it's for myself and for my health, and that is with Halliana Grace, who is one of the bees from Bumblebee Acres, and you know how much I love my Bumblebee Acres farm family. But Halliana is baby bee, and she is a yoga instructor. And so I've been following along in her programs. I don't do all of them. I do some, and I do the ones that are, you know, stretches and kind of centering and calming, and I do those. Well, she came up with the idea for, I think she's calling it Begin Again, 28 days in February, the shortest month, to kind of refocus ourselves. And so we're only a few days into it. It's not too late for you to start. I really enjoy her instruction. She's very calm and very quiet. There's not a lot of elevator music playing in the background, and there's not dance music playing. It's just her talking. Sometimes she's outside, and so you see the farm in the background. Or so far through these 28 days, for the start of it, she's been in front of beautiful old pocket doors in her house, and it's just, I can't tell you how enjoyable it's been for me. Now, I sat down with the program during the noon hour. Morning is I get up very early. I like to sit with my coffee. I like to sit with my knitting, and then I have chores to do. Then I come back in and I have a few other things to do. If I wait till evening, it's too late and I'm tired and I don't do it. So I find that the noon hour is a really good time for me to participate. And so that's what I've been doing, and I can't recommend it enough. She's doing this free of charge, and so it can't hurt you to go and check it out if you're interested in doing that kind of thing. Like I say, I do some of the stretches and some of the things like that. There are a few that I can't do with my back and my ankles and stuff. So, but yeah, so those are two that they're more taking care of myself, I guess, some self-care. So that. But I think that's all that I wanted to round up about that. I've got a little bit more to put in talking about 2 podcasts that I am really enjoying right now and that I really highly recommend, that I think you would very much enjoy, and a little funny story that I wanted to tell that kind of goes along with one of those. And then at the end, I'm going to share some footage in the barn of the sheep when I was getting ready to shut up the barn for the storm last night when it started. And so you'll get to see them. So I hope you'll come back next month and see how I'm doing. There may be a little something before that about these mittens. And other than that, take care of yourselves. Keep in touch. Say hello. All of those things. Thanks for being here. And now on to the podcast recommendations. Okay, one last little bit that I want to include in this podcast is some recommendations for a couple of podcasts that I've really, really been enjoying. I meant to mention these last time and I didn't, so I thought I would do it today. And I apologize for the lighting, as we often say, but I got the light all set. I sat down to film this little bit, and then the sun broke out on this snowy, stormy day. And so that's shining on the snow and really making the light crazy. But anyway, so the two podcasts that I want to mention, and I have the names written here, so I'd be sure to get them right. The first one is Late Night Knits, and that's with Alex. And Late is Laight, Late Night Knits. And she's on Instagram and here on YouTube. And I'll, of course, put the links down below. But they're short, they're fun. She has so much energy. She takes us outside for walks. And if you don't already follow her, go back and watch her version of Vlogmas, which was the 12 skeins of Christmas. And in that, she had contacted makers, shepherds, some mills around Great Britain, and asked questions and got feedback. And what an interesting series that she did. And again, quite short. And I'll tell you what, I found so many other accounts to follow through that. So go back and take a look at those. Like I said, they're only a few minutes long each, or, you know, under a very long time. And so a lot of fun, but I would really recommend giving her a follow. And she's planning to do, she's a fairly new spinner, but she's planning to do later this year a knit along or a make along called Bats to Hats, starting with a bat of fiber, spinning, and then knitting or crocheting a hat. So doesn't that sound like fun? I'm going to look forward to doing that. It'll be a good way to use some of that fiber that I'm spinning up. So that's one, Late Night Knits. The other one that I am just thoroughly addicted to and enjoying, if a notice pops up, either something on the Instagram or something on YouTube, I try to go immediately and watch or listen to, and that's Wild Cottage Ireland, which is Susan and Tom, and especially their two dogs, Shep and Mimi. Well, anyway, if you go and watch, you'll see. Some of you probably already do, but again, short videos, and I think Susan and I are just kindred spirits. They have had a fox. We have a fox that we're watching, a fox family we're watching and enjoying, spinning and knitting and walking and small bits and pieces. And I'm so inspired by her project that she made for the Lost Words Make Along. It was, you'll have to go and check that out. She talks about the grandmother oak, the fiber that she uses. And so just well worth a watch. I enjoy it so much. Sometimes they take little trips out and about, and that's fun too. Tom, her partner, has a collection and he can restore and do old guitars. I like seeing those. I grew up with guitars in my life, and so seeing those is quite enjoyable as well. You won't be disappointed if you go give her a watch and a follow. And I had to tell a funny story, mostly sharing it for Susan to hear. Back before Christmas, she did a little vlog. It might have been part of Vlogmas even. And she told a funny story about getting a parcel in the mail, a package. And it was for, if I'm getting this right, Susan, the box was for a new router for internet. And she thought to herself, well, I didn't order that. And she thought she recognized the handwriting on the package, and she contacted a friend to say, did you send this to me? And her friend said no. And so she thought, well, maybe it was a mistake, and what should she do about it? And I think this went along for a couple of days. And it was her friend Susanna, who is Zordables Ireland, if I'm saying that right. Now, Susanna has a lot of followers, I know, with her farm and her sheep and animals and such. But so Susan told about that and went along a little while. Well, then she opened the package, and it was actually yarn or something else. Susanna had reused a different box to send it. So she laughed at herself about that. Well, Susan, this is where I think it's kind of a funny story for you to hear. At Christmas time, of course, we're having the COVID restrictions and such too. And I have a sister-in-law named Susan, and she was traveling by, and so she brought our presents here to the house and, you know, dropped them off, and then I brought them in. So we didn't have contact because we couldn't get together. But so there was the packages, the box with the packages and stuff, and it was before Christmas, so I'd set them aside. And I don't know how I got confused about this, but I guess I thought maybe it was mail that I had set there. And so I picked up this big, sturdy envelope, and I saw the name Susan on it, and I saw Swordables Ireland. And it was Irish Air, you know, and it had the customs and everything. And I thought, well, how did Susan, thinking Susan from Wild Cottage Crafts, how did she get my address and send me a package from her friend Susanna? And so I opened it up, and it was one of Susanna Swordables Ireland calendars. And you see it here on the wall. Well, it was a gift from my sister-in-law, Susan, who had no idea that I followed along too, and about Susan from Wild Cottage, Ireland. So it was just kind of a funny little story, and I laughed at myself, and I told my sister-in-law, Susan, about that. And so I wanted to wait and share this story with you, Susan, of Wild Cottage, Ireland, about how we both had funny little stories, and also about what a small world the fiber and animal world can be. So thank you to my sister-in-law, Susan, for choosing such a meaningful present for me. And it means even more because I've followed along with Susan of Wild Cottage Ireland's podcast, and she has taken us on visits to Swordables Ireland, to the farm there. And so kind of a full circle moment. So I think that's all I wanted to say about the podcast. There's probably a few others I want to mention, but those were the two that I really, really have been enjoying this last few months. And I hope you'll go and give them a look as well. So there's that. A bird has pooped on Hilda's back. Hilda! Hi, sweetheart. Hi. What do you think? Look at the snowflakes in your wool. Hi, Weezer. I was going to try to take a picture of your belly. Are you shy about that?